Hello, viewers, and welcome to my channel, Jackson's Journal. Welcome to another edition of Jackson's Journal, and today I'm going to talk about what evangelicals will not tell you about the end time. And so this very well could be a multi-part series. I generally like to keep my videos around 15 minutes, and if I still have more material to talk about, I'll just carry it over into the next episode and make it a multi-part series. So this is probably part one of many. And I don't know how many as of yet. I'm kind of doing this on the fly here. So I do have some notes here, but we'll just see how it goes. I haven't estimated how much time it's going to take to present this material. Anyway, but before I do make my presentation, please feel free to like, share, comment, and above all, subscribe. I need some subscribers for this channel. I like to grow my channel, Jackson's Journal. Also, I have another YouTube channel called CCM Drummer. If you like CCM music, you can check that channel out there as well. It talks about CCM music and drums. And this channel, Jackson's Journal, I talk about current events, politics, religion, stuff like that. So that's the thing. Okay, now what evangelicals will not tell you about the end times? First of all, let me just give you some perspective. I am an evangelical myself. I number myself with the evangelicals in the sense that I attend an evangelical church, and I believe most of what evangelicals believe. Okay, so, but I do part ways, and there's some things that evangelicals believe that I would take exception to, and I'm considered a maverick who marches to a different drummer, and especially when it comes to the end times. And I don't know how many times I've been to an evangelical church or Bible study of some sort, and the book of Revelation or Matthew 24 is the topic. And I don't know how many times I've heard evangelicals get these two primary texts wrong. These are primary texts in terms of the end times. Now, I know you have other texts like 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and 17 that talks about the rapture, so to speak, even though the word rapture is not mentioned, but that's the key text there. But Matthew 24 and Revelation are the two major bodies of text that evangelicals refer to when they talk about the end times. And it's getting to the point now when I go to church or to a Bible study and that material comes up, I just roll my eyes and go, oh my Lord, why do I got to listen to this nonsense? And uh, because they get it wrong. They talk about these two bodies of text as if they haven't happened yet and it's in our future. And my last time I heard someone talk about Matthew 24 was at a Bible study, like maybe 4 years ago, my best guess. And he was going and on about how, the Bible study leader at his house, or not at his house, but a house. And there was about, I don't know, 8 to 10 of us in the living room sitting, on a couch and chairs and in a circle. And this guy was talking about how Matthew 24 is talking about the rapture and it's in our future and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, oh, and when moments like this, I would rather hear someone clap on 1 and 3 than for me to hear an evangelical's version of what they think Matthew 24 is talking about or Revelation is talking about. I mean, it really exasperates me so much so now I actually will get up and go to the restroom. Excuse me, folks, I got to go to the restroom. And I check my social media and my messages on my iPhone. I'd rather do that than to listen to what they've got to say because they don't know what they're talking about. Now, at this last um, Bible study that I was at, where the group leader talked about Matthew 24, I I chose to be more discreet. I chose to err on the side of discretion. And so I waited till after the Bible study was done. And after the Bible study, we all go into the kitchen dining room area and we eat snacks like pizza and chips and dips and, or whatever they have at Bible studies, cookies, whatever. And I loaded up my little cocktail plate with my snacks and got my drink. And then I went over to the brother and I said, Brother, have you ever heard of 70 AD? Do you know what happened in Jerusalem in 70 AD? He goes, 70 AD? No, what happened? Well, I says, well, that was the year Jerusalem was destroyed. And the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. They killed a lot of Jews. And it wasn't a very good year for Jewish people that year. The Jews that weren't killed, they were taken into captivity, into slavery. So, a lot of Jews were killed, and Jerusalem itself, the city, the temple, everything, flat, desolate. That was God's judgment on the Jews. And I said, brother, Matthew 24 was talking about that event. Jesus was predicting that event. And then I singled out one verse. I said, brother, have you read verse 34 when you read Matthew 24? Read verse 34. Jesus said, this generation will not pass until all these things have happened. I says, and he was talking to his disciples in a private meeting. And he said, this generation, he means the generation of his time, the contemporaries of the disciples of that time. That was his audience. That's who was going to see this. He wasn't talking about generations, thousands and thousands of years into the future. He was talking about people who were living at the time he gave the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24 and Luke 13 and I think Mark 21. So three Gospels cover the Olivet Discourse. Excuse me while I take a little tea break here. Thank you for bearing with me. And he goes, oh, well, yeah, okay, well, that's a matter of interpretation and blah, blah, blah. I'll have to look into that. So he wasn't very well receptive. He wasn't receptive to what I had to tell him, that he got Matthew 24 all wrong. He didn't want to hear that. But there are 14 verses in Matthew 24 that specifically give you time indicators of when the events that Jesus predicted in Matthew 24 would actually happen. And let me read them to you here. Now, let me just set it all up with the first verse in Matthew. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to its buildings, because the temple complex was a big, magnificent structure. It didn't just have just the temple. It had a lot of things. It was a very big, and this is a product of what Herod, King Herod, the same king that tried to kill the baby Jesus, when he assumed power, he renovated the temple, but then built additional buildings around the temple and created a temple complex. And this became a marvel, a wonder, a tourist attraction. A lot of non-Jews came to Jerusalem just to see the temple complex. It wasn't just Jews. all over the known Roman world making pilgrimages annually to Jerusalem to make sacrifices at the temple, but a lot of non-Jews wanted to see the temple. So that was a big deal, okay? And this is why the disciples were very, uh, taken back and marveled by all the buildings. That was in verse 1. Verse 2, Jesus said, "Do you see all these things?" He asked. "I tell you the truth. Not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." So, excuse me while I mark something here. Tell you the truth. So he's talking to his disciples. I'm telling you the truth. You see all these things. Not one stone will be left. They will all be thrown down. And Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately. "Tell us when this will happen. What will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age?" Now, the end of the age means the end of the old covenant age, the old covenant sacrificial Mosaic law, the sacrificial, sacrificing animals for the remission of sins. That's the age they were talking about, the ending there in Jesus' return. They weren't talking about the end of time and the end of all of history and the end of the entire world. They were talking about the end of the Mosaic Old Covenant age. That's what they were talking about. Okay. So Jesus came back in 70 AD through the Roman army to destroy the temple in Jerusalem. It was a judgment thing. Verse 4, watch out, no one deceives you. Verse 6, you will hear wars and rumors of wars. But see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. And again, the end of the old covenant age. Verse 9, then you will be handed over and persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. Again, he's talking to the disciples when he says you. There's a lot of yous here. He's talking about you. He's not talking about us in our generation 2,000 years into the future. He's talking to the disciples. Verse 15, so when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation spoken through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Pray that your flight, okay, this is verse 20, will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath. Your flight. Verse 23, at that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. And believe me, there were a lot of people back in those days claiming to be the Christ. Even before the real Jesus Christ came, there was a lot of people claiming to be messiahs. Verse 25, see, I have told you ahead of time. So, okay, verse 26, so if anyone tells you there he is out in the desert, do not go out, or here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. 33, even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near. Okay, near means soon. Soon and near, okay? Doesn't mean 2,000 years into the future, near. If it's 2,000 years into the future, I wouldn't think it would be near, do you? Right at the door. Verse 34, and I tell you the truth, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Very key verse. And a lot of evangelicals want to interpret this generation as this race. No, it's not race. Generation means generation. The definition of generation in this verse is the same definition of generation in all the other verses in the Bible where generation is used. So they're not going to change the definition of generation in verse 34 of the book of Matthew, Matthew 24, just to fit our futuristic narrative. 42, therefore keep watch. You do not know on what day your Lord will come. Verse 44, so you must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. And again, that coming would be about 37 years later after Jesus gave this prophecy in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. Okay, so that's a total of 14 verses right there. 14 verses that give definitive indicators in terms of the audience whom he's talking to. Those are audience indicators, thus they're time indicators. Okay, so that's a total of 15 yous, 1 your, and 1 this generation. So that concludes part 1. The next part, I'm going to talk about the time indicators that are indicated in the book of Revelation. So thank you for watching and stay tuned for part 2. God bless and have a good day.